Hi, everybody. Hello, and welcome to the cryptocurrency panel. We are here on a, I want to talk to all these people too. I get it. We are here to talk about cryptocurrency. It's a really interesting moment here for cryptocurrency because I don't know how much attention you've all been paying, but if you haven't been, we're back at all-time highs. Cryptocurrency is about as valuable as it's ever been. One thing I have noted is there's more than $3 trillion invested, or at least $3 trillion of value invested in digital assets right now. That's more than the value of all but a few of the world's largest companies. I think we had someone from Microsoft here. They're still beating crypto, I believe, last time I looked. But I don't think I'm alone in thinking that this is a technology space that's at a real crossroads, particularly in Boston. It's been going boom and bust here with cryptocurrency for really almost 20 years. I mean, really getting up there. And I think what we're seeing now is really putting us at a moment where, it's worth taking a step back to kind of understand where we are and kind of what is being decided right now by what people are buying, selling, and deciding to use. I do have a question for people in the audience. And if you have questions for me, feel free. I can get your questions right here on the iPad. So if you have questions, we'd love to hear them. But I'm wondering how many people are users or familiar with investors in cryptocurrency. Maybe we can calibrate the level of detail we talk about based on kind of, who knows about this and who's just getting started. All right. That gives us, I'd say we got to go, mid-level. Okay. So I am not going to be the one that's going to explain all of this to you because I have some actual experts here. We have Katie Chase, who's Chief Operating Officer of Coinmetrics. That's a crypto asset data company based in Boston. She's been here for 5 years and previously worked at Fidelity on their emerging tech efforts, including their blockchain incubator. We've got Ethan Heilman. He's a cryptographer and a researcher, and he contributes to Bitcoin Core, which means he's one of the people who helps make sure that it doesn't break and still works and that the code operates, and when you send a Bitcoin, it goes to where it's going. Is that correct? And then we have Dave Balter. He's the CEO of Flipside Crypto, another Boston company. And Flipside Crypto is for people who actually, build things on blockchain to understand how their users, what they're doing with it, and how to get more users. So I think we have a lot of people who are deeply, deeply integrated into this world and can kind of help you understand what opportunities might exist in the next couple of years and also kind of, what it means. I think crypto is really as much a cultural as a technological phenomenon. So I think stepping back and kind of understanding what's happening and how people are thinking about it right now will be very instructive. So we can get started. So I think that when we had a conversation ahead of time, I thought, Dave, you brought up a good point that I think was a good frame for some of the stuff we want to discuss, which is I think you saw some departures, some points of departure in the world of crypto right now. You talked about some areas. Is it going this way or another? You talked about, is it going, is it still an open space for anyone to build in, or is it starting to be consolidated to the point where, you really have to be with one of the big projects to make something work? So I wondered if you could talk about that and maybe some of the other points that you mentioned earlier.
Sure. All right. Thank you. Thanks for having me. So the word I used with the panel in the pre-talk was dichotomies, which is really crypto in a nutshell. It sort of lives in the world of a dichotomy. You began today by mentioning all-time highs or the price is up. People who've lived in crypto, we sort of enter every room with how high is the world feeling about our space because of the price of a certain asset, which is really hard. It's a dichotomy for us to sort of live at the lows when they're down, live at the highs when our normie friends start asking us, should I buy Bitcoin again? And then a year later are like, you're still in crypto? Wow, that sounds terrible. That is really hard.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, are you okay? Well, yeah, exactly. That's the question. We don't really want to talk about our president, but I'm going to do it right now, which basically is you have somebody, the dichotomy is you have somebody on one side who is releasing all the regulation that has sort of held the space back, and then on the other side, flogging their own absolutely illegal, my words, meme coin and fleecing investors. So we live in this world all the time of, is the space advancing? Is it not advancing? We think a bit about the sort of overall big picture. You just had one of the largest companies in the space circle go public, 30 billion maybe market cap right now. Deribit just sold Hidden Road for $1.5 billion. There's a lot of true companies getting built and creating long-term value in this space. But we sort of always live in this. Is it just about tokens, or is it a real industry?
Would any of you like to weigh in on any of that?
I fully concur. I think you know, the way you have to look at the crypto asset space is not all things are equal. Not all tokens are equal. You know, there's over 3,000 different assets in this space. There are, in our world, we consider 4 big classes, you know, ranging from currencies, applications, infrastructure, all the way to derivatives. Within that space, there's 41 different subsectors. And all of these things have to be looked at completely differently. If you look at where the market cap is of this space, I think we saw some of the high level stats at the beginning, but over $2 trillion of that is in Bitcoin. So there's a lot of noise in spaces where there isn't a lot of market cap or even like on-chain activity. So.
Yeah, and I think this might be a good place for Ethan to weigh in, because I think one of the really interesting things is when you see these assets run up in value like they have and then go back down, what you are really seeing is people buying and selling it. But the thing that you have when you're looking at cryptocurrencies is actually a piece of software. And the pieces of software that are built using the technology that underlies cryptocurrency are very different, and they can be very complicated. They can be focused on end users like people like me and you, or they can be focused on, you know, traders, or they can be focused on people who are making games, or, you know, making intellectual property. There's a million uses that people have imagined for this technology. And I guess what I'm wondering, as you all, especially Ethan, I think because you're seeing probably a lot of, you know, the innards of Bitcoin, are people building and innovating with the technology, or are they using this as really something to hold and own? Does the technology matter to the average investor who is buying into this? I think that's one of the big questions. And if it doesn't, is that important?
Sure. So I think that the technology matters in a long-term perspective, but in a short-term perspective, often, you know, word of mouth and greater fool theory operate, where if someone wants to, like, you know, pump and dump a coin, we've seen over the history various altcoins just go, like, you know, through the roof, and people make lots of money off that. It had nothing to do with the technology, but had to do with market sentiment. I think one of the things for me, and I think one of the areas that I think matters a lot, that we often lose track of, is that we think of it as this investment asset, and really that actually there's like 2 extra parts to it. There's the technology, the software, and then there's the social aspect to it. And when people aren't using it as an investment, there's a number of activists and activist organizations, especially like anti-Putin activists, that basically couldn't do what they were doing, couldn't make payroll, because if they're operating in Russia, Russia just freezes their assets. So to them, Bitcoin was extremely valuable because it could enable them to run an organization with 100 people in an environment where the government would actively unbank them. But a lot of that isn't actually the technology. It's the fact that you can essentially land in any medium-sized city and within like 1 hour exchange your Bitcoin for local currency. It's the sort of like network of trust and social trust that has been built over the long time in which Bitcoin exists. So I think there's just this other human flesh and blood aspect of cryptocurrencies that are just really important, that enable a lot of the critical use cases.
Yeah, I mean, and I think on that, a lot of people would say we're mirroring essentially the traditional financial services system in the crypto asset or blockchain space. But in other respects, when you think of Bitcoin, it is like one of the purest forms of financial independence and decentralization. I think that exists. So, there are things that are kind of very much reminding us of traditional financial services, and that has to do with a lot of the UI and some of the things that still need to be developed around actually enabling that self-custody. But there are just a lot of really amazing things about what has already been built here.
I think you're raising a really good point, because the actual technology itself is built out of a social movement. I mean, this has become very institutional. Obviously, there's a lot of major financial organizations, including some of the biggest ones here, former employer, for instance, that see a lot of potential in this. But it's also interesting to remember that Bitcoin was hatched out of an attitude that the financial services sector, the financial system, was not accountable to its users, and that there should be a technology that would obviate that power structure. I guess with that, so maybe is it the same thing? You've got a sort of instrument of freedom from centralized power, and that is going to create the opportunity both for innovation and people who are trying to be liberated, and also the freedom to rip people off. Because I think people often see one or the other of these things, and I tend to see them as the same thing, and one is the cost of the other. What do you think about that?
So I think you're absolutely right. If you have uncensorable money, you have uncensorable money, and that means that certain things that you personally would not want people to do with it, people can do with it, but also things that you value and see as virtuous, people can do with it. The meme coin world, especially in Bitcoin, a lot of people get very upset about it, and they're like, how can we prevent this? But my perspective is, you've built uncensorable money such that the people that even work on the project, that work on the software, can't censor it. You have succeeded because people are using it for things that you did not, that you don't think they should be using it for. And I think that's just the sort of the nature of cash, the good and the bad.
I mean, like any of these things, you fight them and then you partner with them. So, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad, and then BlackRock's like, well, it's pretty good for us, so let's get in. I mean, that's what it is.
That, I think, raises another thing that we discussed previously, which is, what do we see, people who are sort of longtime cryptocurrency users or people who have been interested in the space for a while, when you see, large financial firms, sort of core power centers of the financial world going into this space, what do you think crypto gains? What do you think it loses? And how does it remain different from? I mean, this is one of the things that we were parsing through, is like, how does it remain different from the rest of the financial world, and do people want that?
I see it as being, it provides a little bit of like an entry point or gateway drug for certain users that may not be as comfortable with the technology or as technically like sophisticated as some of the OG users. I also think it gives the space a little bit of a stamp of approval in a way. If BlackRock and Fidelity and organizations like that are comfortable with Bitcoin, then maybe Bitcoin is safe. Maybe it has been tested to the point where me as a retail user should feel comfortable engaging with it. So I don't think it's all bad at all. I think it's actually probably net beneficial for the ecosystem.
We're getting rid of the penny. I mean, everyone knows that, right? Like we're entering an era where money is digital anyway, right? Many of us are using Zelle or Venmo or whatever it is, and we don't use dollars the way we used to. We don't have them in our wallet, et cetera. But to make all that happen, a lot of the banks and a lot of the processes have had to have been sort of jury-rigged. How do I, how much of this do I need over here in order to pass money this way digitally, et cetera? And some of those tools have been amazing. Venmo is a good example. Blockchain really just sets the rails right for that process, so that money can't be double counted and all these things. We have old systems that are trying to manage that, but 10, 20 years from now, paper money is going to be less and less relevant to us, and what is the tool that's going to make that digital money be able to be processed effectively? That's really what underpins all the technology.
I have a question from the audience here. Thank you. And I think this goes right to what we're talking about, which is, what do you see as the real underlying value of decentralized currency? Also, why should we care? That's a little more subjective, but we can find. You're watching the show, so I specifically wonder from each of you, what is the underlying value of the dollar, right? When you really start to look at it, right? Like, it used to be based on a reserve of gold. It's not anymore. It's based on derivations of US debt. So what exactly is the underlying value of cryptocurrency, and how do you see that as different from, fiat money, which is regular dollars and cents?
So I think that a really important thing with Bitcoin and some other cryptocurrencies is just that over time, as money has become more and more digitalized and more networked, it shifted the balance of power towards governments and systems of control in a way that I don't think the governments were like, largely this is a good thing or a bad thing. It's just the nature of networks that this occurred. And I think the most dangerous form of authoritarianism is like the fence that's just there. It's not like there's someone telling you no. It's just the architecture of society makes it very difficult to hold controversial opinions or to just go somewhere. There's a fence in the way. And so I think we should be very careful about this. And I see the value of Bitcoin as a way of at least preserving some of that autonomy and human agency outside of the control of a government, which, if you live in a country with a reasonable government, doesn't really seem like that much of a value, which is, I think, why many people in many states see it more of as an investment vehicle. But I think once you start moving into areas where it's more dangerous, more authoritarian tendencies, it becomes more and more valuable because you can, the government can't just say, oh, you don't have a bank account anymore, because just the mere threat of that can be such to have a massive chilling effect on what someone does with their life.
Another thing I wanted to discuss is, what are people making with this, right? We touched on it earlier, but again, this is a very flexible technology in many ways, right? It's got some real limitations, but it's also got some real flexibility to create all kinds of stuff that we haven't really seen broad adoption of yet. And but then you also have these sort of meme elements. Builders versus memers was something that Dave said when we all talked on the phone the other day. And I guess, what are people actually doing with cryptocurrency that's interesting to you right now? Like, maybe not even just cryptocurrency, but cryptocurrency often supports applications and projects that are built using blockchain technology. Like, what is interesting to you? What's new? And are there any places where you're actually seeing mass adoption and mass use among sort of end users? I think both of you, both Katie and Dave, probably.
I've known Katie a long time. She gave me that look, like, good luck to you. I'm going to let Katie answer the hard question, which is what are the use cases that are good. I just want to start at like Las Vegas. Like, we go to Las Vegas, we gamble. Okay, there's nothing wrong with gambling. It is an art or a creative passion for some people. We all gamble because we play in the stock market. Okay, and we spend our days talking about like serious financial stuff, but I'm going to invest in this one and not that one, and I'm going to make money, I'm going to hedge that one and not this one. Just at the base use case for people to be able to have a different form by which they invest in assets, can make money, cannot make money, we live our lives doing that already. So the use case of crypto, maybe the most important use case, is it is a different form by which people can manage their own capital and find ways to make money in ways that they might not be able to in other spaces. So I just want people to remember that, like, we do it any day, every day anyway. Like, we should embrace it.
Yeah, and I think going back to these are all very different assets. There are a lot of different use cases. So I think we talked a lot about Bitcoin, and I think there's very obvious use case for Bitcoin. But if we look at probably the what folks consider the killer app right now, stablecoins. I mean, the use case is just a way to hold a U.S. dollar, and and there's a lot of people that value that. Take the meme coins. I mean, that's a way for you to connect with a community of people that also care about whatever that is. If that's dogs, or if that's online jokes, or if that's a politician, they're creating a community in a way with those meme coins. So, when you look at these different assets, there's just a ton of different use cases. I do think most of them have are realizing what they set out to do. Right? They're realizing their ultimate goal with what they had hoped to accomplish. Their goals are very different depending on the asset.
Here's another one from the audience. Massachusetts has been perceived as behind the curve of crypto, with some folks in leadership blocking progress. That is a statement from the audience. I'm interested to know, first off, I mean, what could change here? What could change in Massachusetts? Obviously, Dave mentioned at the onset that we are seeing a major regulatory reversal at the federal level. With whatever you want to make of that, it is dramatically opposed to how the Biden administration handled cryptocurrency. So I guess my question is, what do you see at the state level as people who are innovating here? Is there anything that gets in your way? And maybe you could talk a little bit about kind of what it might take to get people to build crypto things here. I mean, some really interesting projects have launched here, not least of which are yours. But there have also been some high-profile departures. I mean, we just saw Circle go public in New York. So I'm interested in a lot of that. But maybe we can talk about kind of what we would like to see from the state level government. Anyone can start. It doesn't have to be.
Like you said, it's been a little bit sad and disappointing to see some of the crypto asset firms leave Boston. I think a lot of a city's sort of success in these different industries is around the network and the talent and the ecosystem that's in those cities, and I would like to keep more of the great university graduates and awesome talent in Boston. I think people still love Boston. People still want to move to Boston. I don't think we've lost this game at all. It's just I think we have to create an openness around financial services generally. I think there is the perception that Boston is a little bit hostile towards financial services, and essentially cryptocurrencies are in that vertical.
Okay. So no one else wants to talk about this state regulation.
Kind of a touchy one to touch on.
I got you.
I would just add that as someone that had a company that faced a lot of cryptocurrency company in Massachusetts that faced a lot of regulation. None of that regulation was at the state level. All of it was at the federal level. Yeah, I think, and that was largely pre-Biden. I think just the regulatory uncertainty that the federal government did around it, it becomes very scary when they won't tell you what their interpretation of the law is, but if you break the law, you may go to jail. And it's like, how many founders are gonna take that? I certainly wasn't willing to take that risk. Other people were, and so I think that was a really big problem, and to some degree still is. But I didn't see that at all as a state problem. That was almost entirely federal government.
I think a lot of what you're seeing is just people at the government level, people in the public, people in the field, just learning what is this, how can it be used, and how does that fit into the system that existed before it came. And I think conversations like this are great helps in just kind of starting to, it helped me clarify my own thoughts, if nothing else. So we are out of time. I really appreciate you all joining us. Yeah, thanks to Dave, Katie, and Ethan. I'm Andy Rosen with the Boston Globe.
Thanks for having me.